Please enjoy this video featuring your friends and neighbors, the veterans of the towers of Laguna Woods Village.
Hi, my name is Al Levy. I was born in Pasadena, California many, many years ago.
My name is Irvin Levy. I was in the military for 34 years and I enjoyed it very much. I had a very complex and most interesting career in the military.
My name is Bryce W. Jordan. I served in the original Army Air Force and transferred to the U.S. Air Force when it was organized in 1947 or 48.
I served the Korean Air Force 5 years.
I'm a Morris Seer. I was a staff sergeant. I served 3.5 years in the headquarters of the 397 Infantry.
I'm Herb Harris. I lived here in the Towers for 10 years. I served in the U.S. Coast Guard, which was also part of the Navy. I won an appointment to the Coast Guard Academy in 1941. It was a 4-year course, but we shortened it because of the war. And I graduated and was commissioned as an ensign in the Coast Guard in 1944.
Hi, my name is Larry Strauss, and I was a proud member of the National Guard.
I'm John Dudley, and I was drafted in 1942, and I reported for service in 1943, and went all over the world with many ships, and was mustered out in February of 1946.
Hi, I'm Norm Stevens. I served in the Signal Corps for 2 years.
Irv Fenton, Signal Corps, 3 years.
My name is John Dallas. I served in the Army of the United States, as it was called then, because I was drafted, and I served for almost 2 years. Interestingly enough, I got my draft notice on my 21st birthday, and I was discharged on my 23rd birthday. So that was a coincidence in itself.
My name is Hussein Sopani, and I served United States Army Medical Corps for about 10 years. And while I was working for U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and this was just a side job for the Army Medical Corps as reservist.
I joined the service because I wanted to enlist. I figured that I could best serve my country in a way that was familiar to me as a professional. And so I joined the Signal Corps and spent 2 years in service there, both in the United States and in Korea.
It was an impulse. I had thought about it, but I thought about it for other people, not for myself. I was downtown LA, walking around, and I saw a place that advertised information about the service, and I just went there because I thought it would be interesting to know something about it. And an actor was the one who I talked to, a very handsome actor. I can't remember his name. He never made it real big after he got out of the service. But because of him, I think I joined. He convinced me. And I came home and told my mother, and she was,
My mother was pregnant with me when my father came to the United States. Became a citizen after 5 years and took his rest of the family over, including me, to the United States. And you asked me, why did I join? It was my obligation to join, to fight Hitler. I was very happy I did it.
In June of 1941, we were still in a depression, and this was a chance for education and a career. I chose the Navy because of the very high reputation that the Naval School of Photography had. It was rated highest among all the schools.
And everybody told me, we would love to hire you, but you're looking at a 1-year conscription of a draft. So he said, go get your 1 year over with, come back, we'll be happy to give you a job. So that's what I went and did. It was in June of 1941. So I went down, I enlisted in the Air Force. That was what the guy told me to do, so I followed instructions. So they shipped me off to Harlingen, Texas, where they were building a gunnery school. And that's where I supposedly spent my 1 year military, but December 7th changed all that for me. I didn't get out on my 1 year as a surprise. So that's why I joined the service.
I chose the Signal Corps because I went to school under the National Youth Administration to learn a trade, and it was radio electronics, and I fell in love with it.
I joined the service because I was hungry. I was 17 years old. I'd been working for 2 years. My parents were divorced. And I was making less than $30 a week. And that was for food, clothing, room. And it just wasn't making it, so I decided I'd join the Army.
Back in the 60s, in this country, they had the draft going. And unless you were a young lady or married, you would have to go into the service. Your choice. I chose the Marine Corps.
My Surgeon General asked him, this young man wants to learn something. Can we send him to American hospital? And I was granted to go there. I stayed there 6 months. I studied hard. I read a book of electrolyte water balance book completely. I read maybe 3 or 4 times, which meant good preparation later on to study in America. That was my benefit when I joined the Korean Air Force.
I had 11 people in front of me at the drafter's office, and the other 10 men went into the Army, but when they got to me, they said Navy, and I accepted.
On Wednesday, June 22nd, 1950, I got my commission, which I immediately put away forever, thinking it would never be activated. And on Thursday, I graduated from this well-known college called Harvard, and the speaker at the commencement was Dean Acheson, Secretary of State. And his theme was, "You boys will never see a war in your generation." Saturday there was war. Saturday there was war, and I was traveling in Europe after my graduation, but as soon as I got back, I got ordered to report to Quantico for 2 years duty. So suddenly I was in the war.
I know I was 18 when I enlisted in the Army Air Force, and when I came out, I felt like an old man.
I was commissioned in the infantry, but overseas I switched to counterintelligence and psychological warfare in Europe for a time of 34 years.
I spent 29 years in the service. Now this was both active duty, Air National Guard, and Air Force Reserve. I spent active duty in World War II. Then I got out. While I was attending the University of Wisconsin, I got in the Air National Guard and was called on to active duty again for the Korean War.
The first one I served on was in the Southwest Pacific, and the ship was involved in the largest naval battle in the war, the Battle of Leyte Gulf. I was a gunnery officer on that first ship. That's an interesting story on that ship, but I don't know if you have time to listen to it. But we went from the Philippines to Boston to a secret place in Alaska. And we didn't know why until we got there. But this ship was one of several that was going to be sold to or loaned to the Soviet Union under Lend-Lease so that the Soviet Union could help us invade Japan in 1945. Okay. Of course, that never became necessary because in 1945 the war ended.
I worked with American embassies worldwide as an advisor to the military attaches worldwide. I have quite an experience beyond the Second World War. In 1945, I met the Russians. I was in counterintelligence. Beyond that, I did many other things. I went to embassies worldwide where I assisted the embassies worldwide in analyzing our situation.
When I arrived in Korea, like the previous person who was speaking here, I was very proud of the fact that when we landed in Busan, there were members of 15 other countries, and I thought, this is the way war should be. And then I was sent to the front, and I was within sight of the front for 9 months. Of the 16 of us that signed up at the same time for this program, I saw one of them blown up. So I guess that means my chance was about 1 in 16, but obviously I survived.
We've been out well over a year. Now, we were outside of Tokyo Bay during the surrender and all that sort of thing because we were to cover in case there was any problems. Now, here's 3,000 men who are waiting to go home. And the captain got on the intercom and said, "I'd like to know how you feel about this. If we stay here another month, we can take the prisoners of war at home." And the response was terrific. Everybody shouted yes, and we did. We stayed, converted the hangar deck into a dorm with cots and brought prisoners of war home. And that was very impressive to me.
When we made the final assault on the far end of that, I gathered the guys up and said, "Come on, we gotta go." And they got in line ahead of me and followed up. Of those 6 guys, I'm the only one that lived through that. One was killed immediately, and I had to take him out of a foxhole. He had a premonition. I had to take him out of the foxhole and, "Come on, we gotta go." Yeah, so I was the only one that survived that.
Being in the service, especially in the Bulge, Battle of the Bulge, in Belgium and Germany, was a big factor in my life. I really matured a lot. I was only 18 years old, and but I learned, and I kept the memory of the Bulge in front of me all the time. It kept me really become a good father, grandfather, great-grandfather. My recollection, I think there was something like 680,000 guys, of which 20,000 of them were killed, and probably 100,000 like myself that had frozen feet. You have on rubber galoshes because we didn't have snow boats in those days, and when the galoshes got wet with snow and cold, the galoshes froze, and then that naturally froze your feet. For the first probably 5 or 10 years, I suffered with pain, burning pain and stuff like that, but now that I'm older, it's gone away.
Thanksgiving of 1950, north of Pyongyang, and it was just starting to get cold, and we'd been on sea rations for weeks and weeks, and somehow they got a hot meal to us. It wasn't really hot, it was warm. But I'll never forget that Thanksgiving in 1950.
One thing I remember, in the fall of 1944, I was 21 years old, and the papers came to me while the ship was in New Guinea with a choice for me to vote for president. And I voted for Franklin Roosevelt in 1944.
As a medical officer, I was screening the prospective soldiers to be deployed. And one soldier whom I knew he would not be eligible, he was just approaching me, begging me to let him go to serve the country. That almost brought tears to my eyes. He just put the country ahead of his own life.
I was second in line, the long line in the cathedral, and I was Pope Pius XII, and there was a military audience, is what they called it. It happens every day. But there I was, he blessed everything I had, and I sent it back to my mother, which made her very happy. That was my happiest day in the service.
So whenever I came to an intersection with my ambulance in which I carried my equipment, I would lean out the window and ask the MP who was directing traffic, has Field Hospital APO been through here? And usually the answer was, it beats the shit out of me. That meant no. Well, one day while I was in my tent taking care of a rifleman, my corporal, Corporal Sutton, who was my dental assistant, said to me, "Lieutenant, I have a surprise for you." And in walked my brother Joe. That was 3 years that I hadn't seen him.
The most important lesson I learned from my time in the service was probably being on time, never missing a day's work.
People that I met, the fun that we have, people from all walks of life. Somebody actually had to teach me how to iron. I didn't know how to, I knew nothing. My mother did everything. So I got a lot of help in the service. I learned how to take better care of myself.
It changed the entire outlook on my life, because before I was drafted in the service, I dropped out of college. I was working at a very menial job with no hope of achieving something worthwhile in lifetime. But by going into the service, even though it was involuntarily, it really helped me and provided a pathstone for my life.
Being disciplined is a major advantage for that experience.
Well, the motto of the Coast Guard is Semper Paratus, which means be prepared. And it also turns out to be the motto of the Boy Scouts of America, okay? Always ready, be prepared. And what I learned about that was what you're prepared for was always something different than what happened.
First of all, it made me grow up in a hurry. After I was only a kid, 20 years old, never knew the outside beyond the state of New York, and learned in a hurry a lot about life outside the big city. I think that happened to almost everybody in that era. And that's how it affected my life.
If you were going to join the military, pay attention and look out for yourself all the time. If you ever get in battle, you'll find out soon enough there are no rules, only survival.
I would tell them straight up. I went in the Marine Corps. I didn't really have any, I wasn't shot. I was not a POW. I just went in, did my job, and got out. So I would say go for it.
However, I will say this, that spending time in the service, I think that is something that every young man and person should do. Every woman and young man should spend some time in the service because the benefits will be long-lasting throughout their lives.
I found the most important part of my service were the people that I served with. They saved my life, and I helped save their lives. And I want you to, when you do enlist, keep that in mind, that you're not going to be alone. You're going to be with people who really care for you and look after you and do the best, very best you can. Good luck.
We always have to remember the past, but never ever live in it.